Now this year, 2011, we celebrate the 400th anniversary of the publication of the King James Version of the Bible. 400 years. In case any of you did not recognize the portrait of the elegant gentleman up there, that's King James himself. Now, when I was growing up, the King James Bible was the only one we had around at that time. When I was about 12, I was given my first adult Bible, and it was the King James Version. So that was the only, as a matter of fact, I was well up into my teens before I learned that there were other versions of the Bible around. Back in January of 1604, the newly crowned King James assembled England's leading clerics at his palace, Hampton Court, to denounce corruption in the church, which was quite prevalent at that time. The discussion turned to recent Bible translations, and the king announced that he had never seen a Bible well translated into English. He added, "I wish some special pains were taken for the uniform translation, which should be done by the best learned men in both universities, then reviewed by the bishops, presented to the Privy Council, lastly ratified by the royal authority to be read in the whole church, and none other read there." From this discussion came the book, hailed as the greatest work in the English language, the King James Version of the Bible. Through the years, several misconceptions have come regarding the King James Version. One of them that is kind of strange is the fact that it is indeed a translation. It is reported that a number of years ago, a very flamboyant governor of Arkansas, who was not incidentally named Clinton, in one of his fiery speeches said, "If the English was good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for me." And I was told recently that that same incident happened with a flamboyant former governor of Texas who was not named Bush. But at any rate, why, there has been some misconceptions that indeed about that. Another misconception is that this was the Bible that was brought over to America by the Pilgrims and the Puritans and those people. And that is actually turned up rather recently in quite a few articles. And this was not so. It's the Puritans, the Pilgrims, the Mayflower Constitution, Shakespeare, all used an earlier version, the Geneva Bible. Another misconception is that this Bible was the first to be put into the English language. And that also is a mistake. After several fragmentary translations occurred in the early years of Christianity in England, the first complete translation that came out was one by Wickliffe. And he was a very interesting person. If time permitted, I would like to talk more about him. He was a very strong reformer, and he had very strong feelings that the Bible should be available to be read by all people in the country. And so he had to go over the continent, as I recall, and he translated the Bible using the Vulgate, which was a Latin Bible that had been translated or been collected by Jerome back in the, I think in the 300s or something of the sort. The Pope at that time had asked him to gather all of the Latin versions were around and consolidate them, and that came out in the Vulgate. And so Wickliffe didn't actually go back to original sources, but he did put it into English at that time. It was a very ancient form of English. As a result of that, this translation so angered the prominent church people, church leaders, governmental people in England, that his books were banned in England, and as a matter of fact, they went so far as to ban all translations of the Bible into English at that time, which was to last for a good number of years, well over 100 years. Wickliffe died before they had a chance to do that, but they were so angry with him, they actually dug up his bones and burned them and threw them into the river. So that was a little over a century later came a man who is very prominent in our English language, William Tyndall. Was a priest and a religious reformer, and he made the first English translation from the original Greek and Hebrew sources, completing the New Testament, a large part of the Old Testament, in 1526. His followers continued his work after he was strangled and then burned at the stake in 1535. Several of his followers published revisions over the following years, and these translations he had made from the original Greek and Hebrew sources really still carried on in our Bibles today. The Tyndall revisions. One of his later followers was actually fairly well known to some people in the court, Henry VIII, and he managed to smuggle some copies over there in which he had dedicated this translation to Henry VIII. And this so pleased that monarch that he repealed that ban on English Bibles, and he required that a copy of that Bible be in every church in England at that time. And so Henry VIII did do some things that were pretty positive. There was another ban on the English language Bibles in England that came when Queen Mary, known sometimes as Bloody Mary, the Catholic Queen, had 5 years on the throne. And but then when Elizabeth became queen, why, she revoked that ban. Well, at the time that King James took the crown, 2 English translations were in wide use. Both were largely Tyndall revisions. The Geneva Bible, which had actually come out of a group of people who'd gone to Switzerland during the time when Queen Mary was on the throne, they come up with a variation that was referred to as the Geneva version, and that was very widely used. It was very popular among the people. Another version called the Bishop's Bible had been translated primarily by Anglican clergy at that time, and that was used in the church. So these 2 were available at the time that King James came in. The influence of Tyndall Bibles remained extremely strong. A recent study found that this translation was used 83% of the time by the King James translators. King James, to activate this program we talked about, appointed 54 different authorities to work on it, and it took them 7 years to come up with the version that we have. Although King James has had some bad press by the historians, I won't take time to go into that now, his influence on the translation that bears his name is undisputed, and he deserves considerable credit for that. He convened the meetings of the translators, prepared the guidelines, chose the personnel, oversaw the process, and gave final approval. The eloquent, stately, lyric language of the King James Version remains unrivaled. It was really written to be read aloud. It's unfortunate that we don't read the Bible aloud more these days. Let's compare Psalm 23 from the King James Version. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Compare that beautiful music of those words to the Wickliffe Bible that had come earlier that said, the Lord governeth me, and no thing to me shall lack. And the contemporary English version, you, Lord, are my shepherd. I will never be in need. You let me rest in fields of green grass. Well, let's have a short prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for providing us with your written word, which is such a vital aid to us in our study, our knowledge, and our worship of you. Thank you for allowing us to live in a time and place where we can take full advantage of this very precious resource. And thank you for your many courageous and diligent servants whom you have utilized to bring these messages to us. Lead us that we now use these in effectively serving you. Amen.